Good morning. No, it's funny. I had to say that because in the building I live in, my wife and I say good morning to the evening doorman. And he says good morning back. This has been going on for years. And it is Haydn-like. That's why I did it. Because I hope you were all here last week. Last week with Haydn, we talked a lot about Haydn's humor of mixing up endings and beginnings. With Mozart, it's more that he doesn't want anything to end ever. But he really doesn't. In fact, here's a letter, a phrase from a letter that Mozart wrote to his father, Leopold. I had a dance party in my home that started at 6 in the evening and ended at 7. Only 1 hour? No, it ended at 7 in the morning. That's very Mozart. And it's partly because it's somewhat misleading for a moment, and then you realize that this was a long party. Because you could just picture it. One more, drink, one more flirtation, one more conversation, one more hors d'oeuvre, just one more game. Just keep the evening going. And then you have to say goodbye to every single person there before you leave, and you have to make sure that everybody knows you're leaving. And that's what his music is kind of like. Now, before we get into the music, which is full, when I say it's like that, I mean in the best possible way. Not that it's delaying leaving only, but it's blossoms from the inside. There's an idea. And then within the idea, he gives you another idea. And he keeps interrupting his ideas with new ones. So it's not just adding on, which he also does, but as he adds on, he adds in the middle, and he adds in the front. And it just grows and grows in the most extraordinary way that actually nobody else does quite like that. The famous criticism, too many notes, is completely true, except it's good. But it's an incredible number of notes. Now, before I get into it, I'd like to talk a little bit about musical grammar in a few simple ways, and then say something about Haydn, and then get to it. And this is because I think it helps sometimes to prepare yourself for understanding a musical concept by thinking of that concept in words. It doesn't always work. But I thought, for example, let's take something many people do, which is order falafel. If you haven't done that, you can imagine it. So let's take a sentence at its most basic falafel condition. I'd like the falafel platter. That's the most basic possible way of saying that. Okay, so taking the most basic thing that a musician does in both improvisation and a composer will do in a piece, ornamentation. That is the most basic thing you can do, ornamentation. Here's some ornamentation of I'd like the falafel platter. I'd like the falafel platter, please. That's the first one. I would very much enjoy the falafel platter, please. I would very much enjoy one of your superb falafel platters, please. I would very much enjoy and be grateful if you would kindly prepare one of your superb and renowned falafel platters, please, and thank you in advance. Okay, that's all ornamentation. It doesn't change what you're saying at all. It doesn't go anywhere. It just is ornamented. Now, variation structure in music is often, variations can be extraordinary, but the structure is extremely simple. Things have to remain pretty stable in order for there to be variation noticeably. So here are some variations on I'd like the falafel platter. I'd like the falafel platter, please. I'd like the hummus platter, please. That's a variation. It's not too exciting. I'd like the veggie salad platter, please. That's also a variation because the structure is the same, but you're changing something. I'd hate the falafel platter. That's usually the composer saves right before the end, the minor key version. And then usually they go to one more ornamented one. I'd like the falafel platter, please, and thank you so much. Okay, that would be typical. Now, Haydn. Remember Haydn from last week? This is how I think Haydn would order a falafel platter. I'll be right back. I'll be right back because I enjoyed the falafel platter and I'd like another one. The falafel platter was excellent, and so I'd like another falafel platter when I come back. I'm back. And as you can see, I would like to have that falafel platter again, please. The falafel platter is excellent, and I may come back yet again for another one. Watch out. When you toss the raw falafels into the hot oil, it could be dangerous. Oh, good. It was close, but no harm done. Thank you for those falafel platters, and thank you for those you will make me in the future. Thank you. Thank you very much. See you later. Hey, it's later. I'm back. Okay, and now, to prepare you for Mozart, this is much more elaborate. This hopefully will prepare you for what we're about to hear in various ways, because Mozart has a syntax that's really his own. I'd like the falafel platter, please. I'd like the falafel platter, that's the platter, not the pita, please. I'd like the falafel platter that comes with tahini, and it's the platter, not the pita, please. I'd like the falafel platter that comes with tahini, and that's not the platter, that's the platter, not the pita, and it's for here, please. I'd like the falafel platter that comes with tahini, and that's the platter, not the pita, and it's for here, so on a real plate, not in a carton, please. And isn't it a gorgeous day outside? I'd like the falafel platter that comes with tahini, but could you bring the tahini on the side, and that's the platter, not the pita, and it's for here, so on a real plate, not in a carton, please. And don't you agree it's simply gorgeous out today, and I'm really sorry you're stuck in here making these falafels. I'd like the falafel platter that comes with tahini, but could you bring the tahini on the side, and that's the platter, not the pita, but I'd like some pita on the side, and that's for here, and not on a real plate, then what a pleasure it is to come to your store on such a gorgeous day. I'm sorry truly that you are stuck inside making falafel on this glorious day, a glorious, sunny, splendid day to eat falafel. You made me so happy. Okay, so now we're ready to hear some actual Mozart. Thank you, thank you. Well, if you like that, you're going to love the Mozart. Okay. Now, the thing is, I have to mention one other thing, which is symmetry. That had a lot of symmetry. As you know, it's a lot of repetition, a lot of balance. It's symmetrical, but it keeps expanding in the middle, on the sides, and in the front and the back. And it's still symmetrical. And symmetry is a very important part of most music, and certainly in 18th century and early 19th century music, and it goes on for a while, symmetry. Mozart's, his sense of symmetry is sometimes conventional, but usually not. If he writes a conventional symmetrical concept, it then becomes very bizarre later in the piece. Or he'll start with something that's somehow asymmetrical and therefore needs a symmetrical solution. So let's start right at the actual beginning of this piece as Mozart wrote it. Okay, great, let's stop there. Now we have already some symmetry. You know, have the cello with a question and a kind of an answer. You could think of the cello as Leopold, and that's the answer is Mozart, or you could think of it as a noble person, an aristocrat is the cello, and the violin is a servant. If you think of yourself in a restaurant saying, oh, excuse me, I'd like to order such and such, and this is, oh yes, that's sort of what it sounds like. But it's not exactly symmetrical. The phrases, because they happen twice, are symmetrical. But the number of measures is odd, not even, until it's 5 measures. Let's start again. Just play the first 5 bars. I'll conduct it, but you don't have to look at me. 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2. Okay? It's 5 bars. Now people think, isn't symmetrical even? It's 2 and 2 or 4 and 4. Well, he makes this 5-bar phrase symmetrical, but he does set up a little bit of a problem by having 3 plus 2. Now let's start again and go from the beginning all the way up until the bar of silence, but not past it. And I'm gonna be counting while you do it. 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2. 1, 2. 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2. 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2. 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2. 5 is silent, but it's still 5. That's why it's there. Now, Mozart never puts something, everything has multiple reasons. It is not just because it's the 5th bar of the symmetry. It's also dramatically fantastic. But we'll get back and look at that, because he wouldn't have done it if it didn't have symmetrical sense. It has to have both things. It has to be emotional and logical, not just one. You never see that in Mozart. It's always both. Now, in order to know what it would sound like if Mozart made the opening of this symmetrical and even 2 plus 2 instead of 3 plus 2, I'm going to ask the quartet to play it that way. This is 2 plus 2, just the first 4 bars. Cello part will be a little different. 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2. Okay, you get that? What did I do? Play it the right way again and listen to the cello and how much time there is in the first note. Okay, now play it the wrong way. Okay? So I just took out that extra 3 beats, and it squished the measures from 3 to 2. It sounds more normal that way, and it's a little less exciting. And it's a little less operatic, because instead of just going dum, 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 it's more like, hey, bum, 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 bum. It's like getting attention. And the first note is forte, right? So the first note is, and let's try to make this even more obvious. Play it the right way, but you're the count, and you're ordering people around, and you're saying, oh, yes, I'll get you whatever you want. But let's hear that first note is like, hey, and then you say what you want very nicely. Keep going, keep going. Keep going. Okay, now what's happening? Now, of course, the servant probably went into the back room and said, okay? I mean, it's kind of like that, you know, because it's very soon in their relationship for the violin to suddenly be in a minor key. Now, was Mozart thinking of this? Who knows? But why not? I don't know. The thing is that Mozart did capture human interaction in his music all the time. Everything's like an opera. And so that silence creates tremendous tension in a different way than Haydn does. Because Haydn puts silences in a comic way, usually, so, except for in some very dramatic pieces. So usually in a comic way, and you're not sure what it's doing there, and it's shocking because you don't know how it got there. Mozart's silences are always there for structural, numerical reasons. And yet, they're also dramatic. So let's do that one more time from the beginning. Let's see, how far should we go? Let's go all the way up until bar, let's see, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. And, stop before that little theme in F major. So what's going to happen is you'll have the same music, the same silence. Then the servant, if you want to keep this going, the servant will be really angry. And the cello perhaps is angry that the servant is angry if you keep the count. And then at one point, this phrase, the li-da-da-dum, which is the servant's phrase, they all pass it around because all the servants are discussing this. Okay? It would work perfectly as an opera. Good. Okay, now later on, almost anything that you feel like should happen is going to happen. So for example, I said all the servants start talking. It was only 2, but it will be 3, 4, all 5 of them will do it as the piece goes on. Everything that can be done by all 5 will be done by all 5. Everything that can get bigger and bloom and blossom is going to do that. Every single thing. Now, the next thing that happens is we get a new theme, and then another new theme, and then there's another one, and another one, and another one, one more, two more, three more. There are 11 little themes. That's a lot. Haydn, how many themes did he have in that quartet? One! Now, this is a huge difference between Haydn and Mozart. Haydn stuck to one, and when he used two, it was a big thing. They both are extraordinary in that way. Haydn got every little thing out of this one motif, one idea, which Beethoven took that concept very, very far, even further. Mozart easily could do that, but what he does instead is he'll make 11 little motifs or 11 little melodies, and he'll get everything out of all 11 of them. That's why this is huge, this first movement. It's much bigger than a Haydn quartet movement. It's gigantic because everything blossoms, no matter how small. And they stay symmetrical, so things happen once and then they happen again. Usually as they happen again, they're ornamented. And the ornamentation is just like in real life, when people say more the second time than they do the first time. You know, like, could you pass the butter? Excuse me, I'm just saying, could you please pass the butter over here? Okay, that's ornamentation. You know, the second time, maybe it's because you're being polite, or maybe because you're trying to cover up that you're getting upset about something. Why is this happening? It's fun. I spent the morning with actors, so I'm just, it's even further. It's fun to ask yourself, is this just beautiful? Or maybe it's irritated. You know, you never know. It's, so let's now hear, we stopped at a theme, and we'll take this, let's start actually right at 31. And let me say something about this before you play. The cello, or the count, originally was in C major, the chord. And then in G, the dominant, and then back to C. Now the next thing is the first violin goes into C minor, changes everything. And then the count does this. That's really upsetting. And so the violin goes the same note. So this C sharp brings in my favorite chord of the period, the diminished chord, this very intense, dark chord. And then Mozart does something very beautiful and extraordinary that is really his kind of concept, but I won't say what it is yet. Just watch out for that C sharp. Let's start right on the C sharp at 31 and go all the way until the downbeat of 57. All right, now let's say you have an argument with someone. How do you smooth it over? You have to look at what happened from a different point of view, maybe. You have to look at a C sharp like it's a D flat. You have to take a harmony like C sharp and say, oh, no, it's really not what you think it's. That's the same note. So instead of it being a C sharp in a diminished chord, he gives us first a little hint of a D flat and then takes us into a key that is very unusual for this period to be going into this key. Not for Mozart, though. Mozart always went in, and Haydn too, they went into extraordinary distant keys all the time. It was just all the other composers around them who were afraid to do that. But they did it all the time. And there's usually a dramatic reason. So the C sharp comes back here, here, and then we still don't have it as a key. And now we're in the key of D flat. That's the same note. Dom. Now it's, and that's the C sharp. And then it goes away. And then he does the same pun that Haydn did, which pun meaning there's a chord that could be in two keys. And this chord is the dominant of D flat, but also brings us back to C major. So again, it's extra music. It's a whole new theme. In fact, it's two new themes that we've already heard. But the key of D flat is there operatically. You know, Mozart's sense of opera informs all the instrumental music, and the instrumental structures inform all the opera, and he usually composes great orchestral music. Even if you take the singers out of some of it, it still sounds great. And what he learned from opera, or what he brought to opera, I should say, is that keys and modulations to keys, any extraordinary thing, should fit the mood of the character and the situation. And that's more important than if that's unusual or difficult or hard to do. So he always did it. And here, there's no character, but there might as well be. And the C-sharp diminished seventh chord that has caused, so far, the only real strife is mitigated by being a D flat. Okay, now, I'm going to ask the quartet to play the next phrase with a cut. I will admit that. We're cutting out some music, because the only way to really fully appreciate how much music he adds to what he does is to cut some of it out, and you'll see how normal it is, and we'll put it back. So let's start here and do that cut. Okay, great. Now, if it sounds normal to you, it's pretty close. This time, I only cut out 2.5 measures. Let's put them back, because it's extraordinary, the things that he does that he doesn't have to do. Let's put that back, start in the same place. What was that? Okay? Okay, you see, basically, that's all that I took out. What is that? That's a character in an opera opening a door and making a comment, which does happen in his operas, and then closing the door, and they go. It's exactly what it is. So now let's play that all the way up until, let's do the other cut, but start in the same place. Follow me. Start in the same place. Don't do the cut. But then do the next cut, which is the one that we talked about from 60-something to 82. Okay? So this is a restored cut and a new cut. Okay, there was a big cut there. Now, you're not going to be able to notice them unless you know the piece really, really well, because the cuts work. It takes out something really, really important. But it's dramatically important, more than it is like purely structurally important. In other words, if these bars were missing, it would still be a great piece. And it still works, and it still makes complete sense. But he inserted some music that's very important, and we'll now hear it. Let's go back to the same spot and add everything back in. Okay. See, what I cut out was not harmonically necessary. In other words, it doesn't change any of key things at all. But it goes back to the opening theme, and two really important things happen. and this is really, I want to make this really clear, and it happens many times in the course of this movement, so I'll refer to it a number of times. This is an example of really the genius of Mozart. Trying to rectify the asymmetrical opening of 5 measures, 3 plus 2. He found a way to do it, which he probably knew from the beginning, which is dramatically comical and changes the whole nature of the piece. And it's just making those 5 measures into 4. Can you play right at that D major and listen to what happens between the cello and the violin this time? It's the same exact spot starting at that bar there. You see? It comes in a bar too early, right? Instead of dee-dee-dum-bum, it's dee-dee-dum-bum. So what he does is he creates a theatrical operatic situation which also makes it more symmetrical. You can't find, go look, you can't find, you can't find this that easily anywhere except in Mozart, which is the dramatic situation is also technically superb and solves a problem. If he just interrupted, it would still be wonderful. If it had originally been 4 bars and he made it smaller, it would be a little tricky. But by making it 3 plus 2 and then making it 4 with the interruption, you get 2 things at the same time. You get a restored sense of symmetrical balance, but a disrupted sense of the drama. The drama is now off-center because of the interruptions. Now, we hear that only once. And when that happens, the servants go nuts. Every single one of them says dee-da-da-da-da. They all say that. That's all they know how to say right now. But so let's hear that again and listen that it goes cello, viola, viola, violin, violin, dee-da-da-da. They all react to the interruption. Let's listen to it that way. Okay, you see how beautiful that is? And now, in case you want to hear more of the interruption, of course, you will hear a lot of it, because now it has established a new version of that melody which has to be explored. So in the development section, it'll happen over and over and over, but it will become somewhat normal. We expect them to interrupt each other. Now they know each other very well. They never finish their sentences. So now let's start right at dee-ta-dee-ta-dee-ta-ta. And do the next cut. Now, there are only a few of these cuts left, but you see they really do inform the structure of how he orders falafel. Okay. Okay, good. Now, there was a cut there. And the cut there, I took out the music that messes up the symmetry. In other words, by taking out that music, we have a perfectly symmetrical little thing. Let's hear that again. Just play the first 4 bars, 83, 84, 85. Play 86, 87, 88, and 89, and stop, if you will. Okay, so that already is symmetrical, right? Because it's the same thing twice, and it has a little 4-bar pattern. 2 bars, 2 bars and 2 bars. Now, making the cut, listen to the violas. Let's just hear the violas in the next phrase after the cut. All right, so the violas play exactly the same thing that the violins just played. But Mozart adds music on top of that. He adds a layer. So let's hear the whole thing with the cut, starting at 80, whatever that was, with the cut and everybody playing. Okay. So you hear that the violas are imitating, making it perfectly symmetrical, but something new has arrived. Always something new has arrived. And in this case, it's a little theme in the fiddles, which you will want to hear more because what was that? It was just a little phrase. So it comes back, and it comes back bigger, and eventually it comes back fully blown at the very, very, very end, just when you think it's never coming back. Now, what did I cut out? Let's put it back, and you'll see it. What I cut out is a disruption of symmetry. Okay, now, the thing that he wrote is symmetrical, and it makes perfect sense, but it interrupted a simple symmetry. So he's not doing something here dramatically disturbing, he's just increasing the symmetries. So it's still beautiful. It's like, here's your symmetry, open it up, let's put 4 more in here, and then we're gonna need 4 more at the end, which means later on there'll have to be 12. This is what happens. They get bigger and bigger. Isn't it hilarious when you work on it, you think, oh my God, it just keeps going and going and going. So that's basically what happens. Now, there are quite a few other possible cuts. Let's do one more before we hear more of this piece. Did I ask you to do? Yes, I did. Right. Okay, good. Let's start at 108 or so. Yeah, let's start at 108 and do that cut that brings us to 131. Okay, it's a huge cut here. Okay, good. Yeah, so it's perfectly lovely. There's a nice big cadence in the dominant key, which is where we're still in, by the way, this is still the exposition. This is huge. Hasn't there been a lot of music? There's been already development of ideas and new ideas on top of ideas. We haven't gotten to the first end of a big section. The development has yet to come. Now, in Mozart, a lot of Mozart's pieces, the development is short because the expositions are huge, like this. And you know, it makes a lot of sense because, first of all, sonata structure was not a structure. It was just a concept, right? It's still just a concept. It's always been a concept. And there was no idea that a development had to be bigger or smaller or the same size as anything. So with Mozart, the profusion of ideas and just the blooming of ideas and everything blossoms and it keeps going means that the development section can't deal with all of that. It would go on forever. So he takes the most dramatic or the most interesting thing for himself, does a small development section, then a gigantic recapitulation and a gigantic coda. Now, which also makes sense that, like, you know, when people get to know each other or any kind of new situation, the expositions are actually longer than people think. It's not like a greeting, hello, and that's it. I guess that happens. But the arguments, the development is sometimes called the argument. It can be very short. That doesn't mean it's not really dramatic and powerful. But the opening has all the material of all the characterizations, and then the development is shorter. So I hope you didn't forget. Maybe we should do that one more time, because you might have forgotten the music. Okay, here it is with the cut again. I was reading Matt's face. He thought they forgot the whole thing. So you're right. Okay, let's do it again with the cut. Okay, now let's put the cut back. I know you don't miss it, but you will now. You'll hear it. There it is. So that was 16 measures which had two brand new ideas. Two brand new ideas. One was this little offbeat. That little thing, which also goes minor on us. This little thing back and forth, which has all kinds of, there are all kinds of little clues that that's going to happen. For example, in the viola, right before that, we have this D sharp in the viola, right here, becomes an E flat later. So almost every time you have a beautiful note, if you look a little before it, you'll see it in a different context. And they all, each of the notes even blooms. I'll give you another example of that. Way back earlier in the piece when we had, remember that? Well, if you take that backwards, you get, which is what we just were listening to. And it comes back many times, and eventually you want, isn't it ever going to go up? At the end, only it goes up. Okay? So it's just incredible. Everything you desire, he will. I don't know how we had time to do this. But anyway. Then we have a little coda, which you just heard. Now, the beginning of the development section it's both surprising and it's inevitable. Those are the two words that we put together to mean that it's really well done, surprising and inevitable. And he takes the C sharp diminished chord that first caused the drama and then the D flat. That's where he begins. But he puts it in the cello. It was in the violin before. Now it's in the cello. Now, let's hear a little bit of this. And what you will hear are the interruptions that make it into 4 bars. Those interruptions and overlappings are now normal. But they're disturbing. Let's hear it. Okay, so you get the point is that what was a disturbance is somewhat normalized, something we all know all about. A little disturbance becomes normalized. Do you accept it? Okay. But basically, it's still very dramatic, and it's still disturbing because of the overlap. But you know, because there will be a recapitulation, that the music will come back again without that overlap, and then with that overlap, and then it has to get resolved somehow or other. The next thing we have is a long series of beautiful suspensions. A suspension, let me remind you, nothing to do with school or suspended cymbals. It's, again, if you just take a note and a chord, and the chord moves, but that note is suspended above it. And then it has to resolve. You had enough? Okay, we can go on all day. So where does that come from? Why is he's going to have a whole series of these? It comes from this phrase. Because this is a suspension. And just because he is now going to develop that. He's going to just look at that, focus on that, and have a long series of beautiful suspensions that overlap each other in most very Mozartian way. He loves to do this. So let's hear that suspension passage, probably starting at 69, 71, 71. Oh, no. Let's go back. 168. And by the way, when this starts, your attention is drawn to the first violin doing this. But the second violin is going. There it is again. It's the same 3 notes that have come back many times. They were like this. Now they're like this. And now they are used to create a different harmony. And the first suspension comes out of it. Everything connects. There's not anything that isn't totally organic. Let's try that. And free range. Okay, go ahead. Okay, now, good. Those suspensions went all the way through that, even though he brought back dee-da-da-da-dum, dee-da-da-da, dee-da-da-da, dee-da-da. He brings that theme back, but the suspensions are still happening. Just to make the suspensions more obvious, there are all these performance practice traditions that evolve and make people play certain ways. What you just did was a little bit early music-y, right? You know what I mean? Was that a decision that you talked about, or thought about, or it just happened? Okay, whatever. But I'm going to ask you to do something that is just for demonstration purposes, which is, let's have everybody who's not playing the suspended note, do not use vibrato. When you have the suspension, vibrate into the suspended note and then come out. Let's see what that does. It's going to make it more obvious. It doesn't mean you have to do it this way, but it'll make it more obvious what's happening. Okay, great. So there are many ways to do that, and it's like choruses also have many traditions about, there's ways of doing this, moving into it. It's tricky because I think the best way to do it is to find a way that sounds different from one you've heard. I don't know what that would be right now, but like some weird new way. But Mozart, in most of his development sections, in his chamber music and symphonies, has a section like this, where the harmonies just keep changing around a series of connected suspensions. And they're quite dissonant for the period and very surprising, and they make you feel a little seasick, actually, which is very extraordinary. Now, many things return, but we have not yet gotten to the recapitulation. We're still in the development. When we hit the recapitulation, it's quite obvious. So let's do that. Let's start at 201, and we'll play until 230, okay? 230. And what's going to happen is you'll hear the recapitulation sounds like the beginning of the piece, like the exposition. But he cuts out a huge amount of music himself. I didn't do it. He cuts it out because he already heard that he needs to do different things. Because, yes, Mozart repeats many things, almost everything, from the beginning to the end, but he also changes them and adds. He doesn't just take away. If he takes away, he adds. So let's hear that, and you'll see that C sharp, after you're in C major, that C sharp, that was originally in the development, came early and then came in the development. That comes much sooner this time. All right, here we go. Okay, now, after the C sharp comes crashing in the violin, which is quite obvious because the violin goes instead of it going there, it stays here. Then you hear the same music, and the D flat, that idea of softening everything in a D flat, starts to happen, but he has a great idea. And he goes into these essentially D flat minor, but we don't use that key. It's just not used, so except for Scriabin. It's what happens, so he goes into C sharp minor, that's the equivalent, because it's just so messy, D flat. Ugh. But anyway, it sort of doesn't exist because it's the relative of F flat major. These things get really sticky. But anyway, so basically what happens is, we, just like before, but it becomes minor. And it doesn't last long. And it changes key rapidly. So this is one of the great things. Mozart really does not condescend. In other words, he wants you to listen carefully and assumes that you will follow this and be engaged in this extraordinary series of harmonies where he goes into C sharp minor, which is really, really far away from C major. It is. In other words, we don't go C, C sharp, D. In terms of harmonies, we go by fifths. So he has to go, to get to C sharp minor, he's kind of doing this. The next one, it's not even here. No, I could have started an octave lower. But in other words, going up in fifths. That would be C flat major. So if we want C sharp minor to E major, it's closer, but we're really going in minor keys. I hope this is not too bizarre. Whoops, sorry. There it is. So it's pretty far away in terms of the structure of things, and it's very bizarre. And the moment you get C sharp minor, he leaves. And then he goes to A minor, which is a normal key for a C major. It's the relative key, but it doesn't sound so normal because he went through C sharp minor to get there. It's extraordinary, sophisticated harmonic writing for any period. But even if it were put in the late 19th century next to Brahms and Wagner and Mahler, it would still be amazing. So let's start at, let's do it right at 2:30. And what's hilarious, at least I think it's hilarious, is he ended up exactly in the same place as he did in the Exposition. So he went through this wild, intricate thing very quickly to go right back where he was. That's one of the things that makes the music so extraordinary, is that it's not always about going to a new key. It might be just passing strangely through a key to go right back where you were. It's kind of like if you on a much traveled path or a place you know really well, and just for the first time you think, I've never actually looked over there. I've been here so many times, I've never looked around the corner. So he goes around the corner, and it is pretty weird over there, and then he comes back. Okay, now, this piece is already very large, and this movement, I should say, is already very large. Then he gets to what could be the ending. He brings back all this music, it could be the ending, but he basically says, stop, and does something unexpected. The stop is the typical stop chord of the period of the 18th and 19th century. It's the diminished seventh chord. That means stop what you're doing. Because, I mean, if you're playing in any key, and you have, that's your stop chord. And that's exactly what he does. He puts it in a great spot. And I think, and then after that we have this enormous interpolation of a coda. Okay, and it's basically he doesn't need this chord. I mean, it's great, it makes the piece better, it's very dramatic, it's wonderful, but he doesn't have to stop everything just to do this. But it's almost like calling attention to the fact there's now going to be one more section that is going to be very satisfying for all of you. And it is. Okay, so let's start at 305. And go up to the stop chord. Oh, good, there's the measure rest, too. Okay, the measure rest is very, very important there. It's the equivalent of the measure rest at the very beginning. And now, again, so it's structural, but it's also very dramatic. And of course, he knows that it's both. And then we begin to have an amazing coda, which has a pedal point. There have been a lot of pedal points. This is a very long one. There have been several long pedal points. A pedal point is when a note is repeated while the harmony around it may change. It's just like a traffic cop stuck in the middle of something who just stays there and things go, they stop, they go, but he's always there. So that's what it's like, only sounds better than traffic. So what happens is we get the closing theme in a whole series of new versions. We get counterpoint. We haven't really had this kind of counterpoint. We get flirtation with a minor key. And then we get the most satisfying thing of all, which is, remember that little tune? It has come back many times. But now when it comes back, he turns it into something one time. And it's only at the very end. It's really, really satisfying. It's kind of a big tease thing. It's like we've been waiting for this for so long and you thought it wasn't going to happen. So let's start right at the bar after the silence. Okay, so let's do that again. I think it would be nice to have the people playing the tune just a little louder than everybody else, so that everybody else can come back a little bit. It'll sound probably more operatic. And it's just like if you were singing and the conductor would be going like this. So, and at that point they zoom in on Moody's face. Have you ever seen any of those? Those La Scala recordings? Everyone's on stage acting, but they cut to Moody's face conducting right at the most crucial part. I don't know why it's right. Okay, so let's do that like that, but let's not go all the way to the end. So, but starting at the same spot. Yeah, so what you get finally is a theme that was just tacked on and a short, abbreviated little motif tacked on at the end of the exposition on top of a symmetrical phrase. So it was just like a decoration, which keeps coming back. And finally, not only is it a tune with a shape, but all three sections, if you want to think about it. I mean, you have three duets encompassing all 5 people. They all get to do it. That hasn't happened before either. So that basically sums up what happens in this piece. But let me say a few more things about it, and then we'll hear the whole first movement. So what you have is a combination of an effusion, a blooming, a blossoming of every little possible idea. And each idea comes somehow from a previous idea. But even they all seem new. And there's, it's different. This is what I really want to point out. It's different than the paradigm that is considered classical composition. The paradigm is Beethovenian. Like if you study composition, or read about it, people always talk about taking an idea as far as you can, limiting yourself to just a few thoughts and exploring them deeply and profoundly. That's what Beethoven usually did, and that's what Haydn usually did. But Mozart also explored everything fully and profoundly, but he didn't limit himself to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 ideas. Nobody else does that. And if, even today, in any style of music, if somebody has too many different themes, somebody will probably say, oh, you've got too many ideas here. But with Mozart, that's the glory of it, that it's just so, it's ebullient, it's flourishing, and it really is, it's often been described as walking in a garden that's just full of different kinds of beauty, and it doesn't matter where you look, it's beautiful. And any place you concentrate is fully bloomed and fully developed, and everything's nourished and everything is gorgeous, as opposed to one thing cultivated really, really well, or two things cultivated well. And the other aspect of it that I love about Mozart, that this piece demonstrates perfectly, is the combination of structural integrity, of technical integrity with drama. That it's not just dramatic, and it's not just technically perfect. They fit together, just like that business of the 3 bars plus 2 being asymmetrical, becoming symmetrical by the interruption. The interruption is comical, it's theatrical, it becomes dramatic, but it's also a resolution of a technical problem he set up. The silences are dramatic and very effective, but they're there because they need to be there for the numbers to work out too. So how does somebody do that? I don't know, you tell me. Now, now we will hear the entire first movement. I think there's just enough time to grab a falafel, and I'll see you next week. All right. Okay, thank you. Bravo.